All right, all right. Well, before we get started today, this is Patreon Q&A part. I don't know. I don't know what part it is, but it's for September 2019. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank you so much again for another month of your support. It is highly, highly appreciated. I just so grateful that the work that I'm doing on YouTube and elsewhere is helpful for so many people. And just want you to know that if you find my work helpful and you're supporting it, there are lots of other people out there that also find it helpful that for whatever reason aren't supporting or can't support. A lot of people reach out to me and wish they could support, but they just can't right now. And that's totally fine. But I want you to know that you're helping, get this message out, and you're a part of that because I don't know if you've noticed, but over the last few weeks, I've been pumping out content pretty much every day, and I could not do that without the support that I get from you guys. So thank you so much. I believe that the YouTube channel is having an impact on a lot of people, and I get feedback constantly about people who say, hey, this is going on in my church, this is going on in this and that, my friend said this or that, and your work has been so helpful for me to help to understand these things and to talk through these things with my friends and stuff like that. And that just is awesome. I'm so glad for that. And so if you support this work, thank you so much. And I will get to your questions in just a moment. But I wanted to say this too, and there's a few of you that support me that we've talked, kind of online and stuff like that. And we don't. So I have beliefs as a Christian that are pretty unpopular, and so there's a good chance that you don't share all of the same beliefs that I have. And there are even a few people. There's one person in particular who said, "Hey, are you okay working with me? Because there are certain things that you believe that I stand against with everything I have." And I'm like, we're going to have to learn how to deal with that. It's okay for us to disagree on some issues. Obviously, there are some non-negotiables as well. But on the negotiables right now, look, we got to be on the same team here because the reality is that the movement that we're facing and a lot of the political stuff and the cultural stuff, it's pretty tremendous. And so anywhere where we can find allies and not compromise ourselves is going to be very important. So the fact that we disagree on some things is totally okay by me. Obviously, again, there are some non-negotiables, but anyway, let's get to the questions. And again, thank you so much for your support and for being a patron. I appreciate it, and my family. It really does help my family as well. So thank you. All right, first question today. The question is, at what point do those pushing the social justice agenda rise to the level of false teacher? Do you believe the social justice purveyors within the church are preaching another gospel? If so, at what point should we mark them as false teachers and begin to treat them as unbelievers? This is actually kind of a providential question because, the person who asked this, may know about sort of my history and some of the things I've said on YouTube, and I've very much hesitated to call people false teachers. I've said that I disagree with them. I say that their beliefs are very dangerous. I say that their teachings on social justice are false. But I've hesitated to call them false teachers and to call them unbelievers. But just this past week, if you haven't seen the video, it's called Kyle and Jamar Have Revealed Who They Are, and We Should Believe Them. I put it out last Friday, and it's about Kyle Howard and Jamar Tisby. And in the video, I do call them false teachers. I finally take that step with them. And I still am going to hesitate to call most people false teachers. However, there is a line that can be crossed. And I think the real answer to this question is it's really going to depend on the person, because there are some things that are clearly non-negotiable. Like if somebody says, Christ can't forgive your sins, or Jesus didn't come as Jesus is not God in flesh, or something like that. Obviously, that's an unbeliever right there. Obviously, but there are false gospels that are more subtle than that as well. And so, if you didn't watch that video, what I said was that if you can turn, because Kyle and Jamar Tisby, they were lamenting the fact that Christians were praising the brother of the guy who was killed by Amber Geiger, because he forgave her, and they were saying, "Oh my goodness, this forgiveness is kind of dangerous because people might forget our justice movement and things like that, and black forgiveness can't be demanded and things like that." And I said, look, if you are going to use something so good as a brother forgiving his brother's killer, and you're going to use that to divide the church between white and black, and you're going to keep doing that no matter what is in the news. All you want is division, division, division. And you might say you don't want division, but all you do is divide. Like, at that point, if you're going to even use a good thing to divide the church, at that point, I have to treat you as if you don't understand the gospel. You don't get it, you don't teach it, and you don't want the unity that is promised in the gospel. You don't want it. And so, I think that the point, unless it's a very clear sort of heresy, obviously we have to all agree that if somebody says Jesus was not God in flesh, that would be a heretic. Unfortunately, we don't all agree out there because, still people will say Martin Luther King Jr. was a Christian. He clearly wasn't. So I think it kind of depends. You need to decide for yourself, what are your sort of indicators? How much is too much? Because the reality is that my threshold for what's a perennial divider of the church might be different than yours, but we all have to have a threshold, and we all have to try to apply it consistently. So if somebody's dividing up the church like a pizza constantly, I think it's a pretty good warning sign. So unfortunately, I can't really answer this question for everybody. Everyone's going to be different for the most part. But for me, that if you haven't watched that video, watch it, because I kind of explained myself and why, though I've hesitated, I'm not going to hesitate anymore. It's unfortunately it's not a clear-cut thing. It's not a clear-cut thing because on the one hand, we want to separate from Christians who are unbelievers, but on the other hand, we want to have a little bit of grace because we all know that, like I said in the beginning, there are certain things that we think are important that we're going to differ on, and we don't want to necessarily separate with everybody. I happen to think that, and look, I love Baptists, and I understand why they believe what they believe. But I happen to think that infant baptism, Presbyterianism, is the best summary of the Bible's teaching. And I think that if you don't baptize your babies, that sometimes bad things can happen or bad lessons can be learned, so to speak. But I'm not going to divide with Baptists just because I believe that. So I don't know. That's kind of a rambling answer, but unfortunately, it can be a judgment call at times. Thank you for your question. All right. Here is another question. It says, thank you for your work. I'm always trying to learn more about properly applying God's law to every area of life, and you've been a big help with that. My question is, what are your thoughts on NATO? It's my understanding that one of the roles given to government by God is to defend borders and to fight defensive wars. But what if a nation you're allied with is under attack? Would it be biblical to make a promise to a different nation to protect them from harm in the first place? Yeah, this is a good one. And this is, so one of the things about believing, about God's law the way I do is that I fully admit that I understand that there are going to be some debatable points, and we haven't got it all figured out yet. We need to have these conversations about God's law and all of that. But, sorry about that, I had to answer a quick question from my wife. But just because I believe God's law addresses everything and gives us the foundations for everything that we need to do in civil society, doesn't mean that I have it all figured out, or it's going to be very easy to figure out how to apply it. Because some things are very easy to figure out how to apply. You murder someone, the death penalty, right? That's very easy to apply. But other things like this NATO question are not quite as easy. And I think that it doesn't necessarily. So I would say this. That there's nothing inherently in God's law that would say that we could not help defend an ally, if that's something that we chose to do, that we couldn't help defend an ally from attack or something like that. But at the same time, like something like NATO or something like or something like some of these other treaty things, they might get us entangled in situations that we shouldn't be entangled in. Because as the questioner says, like, we can defend our borders. Yes, that's definitely true. We can fight defensive wars. Yes, that's definitely true. But it starts to get squishy when we're involved in other people's wars. Is it truly defensive or not? Did the other people do something that they shouldn't have done? Did the other country, overstep its bounds and things like that? So I guess so. I wouldn't have a problem necessarily with alliances and treaties and things like that with other countries, so long as those other countries were also committed to, a biblical understanding of what they should be up to. You know what I mean? Like, if we had a treaty with a country that was like, doing all kinds of shady economic, sanctions and various kinds of things, and then as a result they got attacked by someone, and now all of a sudden we're their allies, so we got to come to their defense. Like, that I wouldn't want to be a part of, right? So I guess I would, in theory, I don't have a problem with alliances and helping out neighbors and stuff like that, or helping out people that can't defend themselves. Like, in theory, I don't have a problem with any of those things, but all of that would be premised on the idea of, still, only going to war when it's truly defensive or when it's truly for a good cause, and that gets a little squishy. So I don't really know the answer, to be honest. It's a great question, and it's a question that I think needs to be debated and teased out and really studied. When you look at the Old Testament and what happened and how they did things and the law of God and how that worked. But anyway, that's a great question, and unfortunately, I'm just not equipped to answer it completely. But I think it's one of those things that kind of proves that we need to study God's law more. We need to study God's law more, because there is a good and moral answer to this question, right? And we need to believe that, of course. And I think that if we search the scriptures and we really thought about it and studied it and prayed about it and all these things, that we would have the answer. Okay, let's go to the next question. This is a good question. I like this question. I don't really know the answer. You guys are asking some good questions. Like, a lot of these questions are nuanced, if you know what I mean. Nuance, my favorite word. Okay, he says this. He says, I've really benefited from your work, but I have one question about one style of video that you do sometimes, namely live reaction videos. Wouldn't it be more biblical to read and watch the content beforehand in order to get a firm grasp of it, so that no mistakes are made and that no accidental false accusations occur? Why or why not? Great question. And yes, I do sometimes do live reaction videos, and oftentimes, actually, I think almost every time, when I'm doing a live reaction, I tell you up front, hey, this is a live reaction. You know what I mean? I don't want you to think that I've read through this and I'm like faking my reaction or something like that. So, and sometimes what I'll do also is I'll read like the first paragraph, and I'll say, hey, I got to do a live reaction to this. And then so not all of it is a live reaction, but most of it is. And honestly, I don't really see anything unbiblical about doing a live reaction video. So because here's the thing, like, if I'm talking to someone and we're having a conversation or something like that, that's a live reaction. I'm listening to what you say, thinking about it quickly, and responding. So there's nothing wrong with like not having thought things completely through when you talk to someone, and I don't think that there would be anything wrong with putting a video out like that. I think that the biblical issues arise with what you said here, is that if you make a mistake and you make a false accusation or something like that. And I'm not going to say that I've never done this. I've never made a mistake or never made a false accusation. In fact, I'm pretty sure I have done this kind of thing before. But oftentimes what I'll do if I'm doing a live reaction video, and I'm sure you can find an exception because I'm not perfect, but oftentimes what I'll do is I'll say, hey, look, I'm not 100% sure, I don't know, but here's what I would think based on what I've read. And I'll give you my take or my opinion there. And so it doesn't, look, I'm before God, I have to account for every word I say. And so a live reaction video, if I do it in a careless way, that could potentially be a problem. But if I'm not doing it in a careless way, I don't really see the problem with it at all. And also, the other thing too is, If I do a live reaction and I think what I've said is wrong, I won't post it. I've done that before. I've actually done that before. I don't post every video that I make. Sometimes it just doesn't turn out the way I thought it would, and I just don't post it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with sort of a live reaction kind of video. There is something wrong with misrepresenting someone and making a false accusation. And do you run the risk of doing that more in a live reaction video than you do with a kind of a produced video? I would say probably, but I don't think that makes the medium in itself off limits, if that makes sense. It means that you need to be more careful, maybe be a little bit more measured, maybe not say as bombastic of things that you would when you've thought about it. So if we're going to do live reaction videos, and if I'm going to do live reaction videos, I need to be extra careful, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But it's a good question. It's something to think about, and it's something that I will think about the next time I decide to do a live reaction video. So thank you so much for that question. All right, so the next question from For the New Christian Intellectual. Thank you again for your support, guys. First question is, books on theology that you would recommend for people getting started doing their own platforms. Well, I'll say this. I'd recommend pretty much the same books to everyone, regardless of the reason, whether they're building a platform, whether they're just trying to understand the world, whether they're just trying to understand theology. And that's, there's really 5 books or 4 books. Let's call it 4 for right now. So the first one is Calvin's Institutes. I mean, that book is a huge book. You could spend years reading it. But John Calvin, I mean, let's just be honest. John Calvin was a genius. It's just that simple. You don't have to agree with him on everything. You don't have to agree with him on most things, but you will definitely get value from Calvin's Institute. So that's number 1. Number 2, I would recommend that you read Rushdoony's Institutes of Biblical Law. Again, you don't have to agree with his conclusions and stuff like that to get value from it. He goes through the Old Testament and the law of God step by step and has so many insights into it. It's just fantastic. So we've got the Institutes of the Christian Religion from Calvin and the Institutes of Biblical Law by R.J. Rushdoony. The third book that I would recommend is a book called, actually it's 3 books in one. It's the trilogy from Francis Schaeffer. So this is talking about culture and society from a biblical perspective, and different things regarding art, philosophy, cinema, all kinds of amazing insights into culture and why things happen the way they do, the flow of history, the flow of philosophy, and all of that kind of stuff. Fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It's actually 3 books in one, so it's his 3 primary books. Francis Schaeffer trilogy is awesome. The last one I'll recommend is called Millennialism and Social Theory by Gary North. Millennialism and Social Theory by Gary North. What it seeks to do is apply the Word of God to the issue of history. And it's talking about millennialism, not like millennials, like I'm a millennial or something like that. It's talking about post-millennial, premillennial, and sort of the different views of history and how it affects social theory. And so this is a book that is tremendous. It helps you. It's really good. I hadn't ever heard thinking or writing like this when I read it, and it's been helpful for me, and kind of in the same way that Francis Schaeffer's book was helpful for me. Helpful to interpret society and to understand what your beliefs on millennialism has to do with what ends up being your social theory. So anyway, those are the 4 books that I would recommend for anybody. Not just if you're building a platform, but it will help you interpret, society and news and things like that. Anyway, the second question that For the New Christian Intellectual asks is, what would you do with your own platform if it was 100 times as big 2 years from now? I don't know. What would I do with my own platform if it was 100 times as big 2 years from now? Well, I think if I had a platform 100 times as big, I would have, almost 300,000 subscribers. I'd be making a decent living off of my platform, most likely, if I had that many subscribers. What I would want to do is I would want to, probably get involved with doing actually well-produced documentaries or movies that where I could go on site places, fund, sort of travel and things like that, interviewing, maybe even debating things like that in a produced kind of way. Obviously I know a couple of movie producers that I could team up with, that I could pay to do some of that stuff. I think that would be awesome. Kind of like I don't know if you guys watch, I know I'm kind of outing myself here a little bit, but it's okay. I don't care. I don't know if you guys ever watched Stefan Molyneux's YouTube channel. I find Stefan to be fascinating person. I disagree with a lot of what he says. I agree with a lot of what he says. And I just find him to be such an interesting, and he seems to be a very honest character. When I say character, he's obviously a real person. But one of the most interesting people that I know on the internet. Anyway, he's recently been doing movies. He did a series about California and how California has gone from being a great place to kind of a crappy place, and kind of a bad place, and really well done, well produced, and he's interviewing people and all that kind of stuff. I think that kind of stuff could be really effective, and I think that I think I have a skill set that could lend itself to that kind of thing. I don't really know because I've never done it. But anyway, that's what I would want to do. I'd want to start making I would still do the YouTube stuff, kind of like the vlog stuff that's not quite as produced, but I would want to do some stuff like that, like those documentary type movies. Anyway, thanks for the questions. Thanks for the support. Last question for this month. The question is, have you thought about doing a walkthrough of the Old Testament laws? Yes, I have thought about doing that. And honestly, what I would be doing would be nothing new, most likely. So the book I recommended just a second ago, Rushdoony's Institutes of Biblical Law. Even if you're not a theonomist, even if you don't agree with him on everything, that's okay. But that goes through the Old Testament law very well. And what's great about that book, and books, not a lot of books do this these days, especially the popular Big Eva types. But in the back, it has a list of scripture, and you can look at any scripture essentially, and it'll be in that reference. And he talks about it and explains it and stuff like that. Sometimes better than others. I mean, let's just be honest. There are sometimes he explains a scripture that I'm like, I don't know if that's really what it's saying, But most of the time, I find it very helpful. So, if I were to do something like that in a video form, what I would try to do is I would try to make it a little bit more accessible. And hopefully take out some of the parts about Rushdoony that are, maybe not quite as good. Because let's just be honest, if you know anything about Rushdoony, you know that there are some things about him that make him slightly unpalatable, let's say. Plus, he looks like Count Dooku. Anyway, but yeah, I have thought about it. That would be a tremendous undertaking. Honestly, that would be something that I would do if I was able to dedicate more time to YouTube. Because again, right now, I've said, I have a day job, I have a recruiting, a consulting business that I run, and it's not a big business. It's just me, really. And that's how I feed my family. So I need to dedicate most of my time to that. If I was able to dedicate more time to videos and stuff like that, I'd probably be more tempted to do something like that, because that would take a lot of time and research and care. That might be something I would want to do for a documentary, something like that. But anyway, thank you so much for the questions today. Highly appreciate the support. And again, if there's anything ever I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me. God bless. I hope you find this helpful.